there is a connection here.
If my reaction is an 8 or a 9, and the event that I'm actually experiencing in front of my being right now is a 4, then that tells me that this is my past coming up into my present. So how can I help my body, my mind readjust?
How much is my hippocampus pulling from the past to reference, right, the present?
And here we go now. Yep, here we go. Okay. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you for joining us today. We're bringing in the energy.
We are. We absolutely are. You gotta shake your body.
Shake your body. We were actually just talking about that right now, and talking about, I just recently was just sharing with Kian how I had went to this conference where Dr. Bessel van der Kolk was sharing, as well as Dr. Scott Lyons, and I want to say it's Leisha. I don't want to mess up her last name, so I'm not going to say it. But she was a somatic body worker, and it was all about trauma release. And so very naturally, Kian and I are just having our own little prep session, and started naturally busting out into in sync rhythms and movement. So I just think that's really interesting how sometimes our body is going to recognize what maybe we need to get into the space and transition.
1000%.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, just kind of thinking about like the topic we're going to discuss today, like being connected to your body. We have talked about this to a certain extent in other episodes, but we really just kind of want to dive in to really just understanding why. Why do we need to connect to our body? Because we always hear this, right? We hear it all the time. You need to be more in your body. You shouldn't be in your mind. And so as, you know, I'm thinking about it, like what comes up for me, or what do I want to, or what am I thinking about in terms of that topic? It's just really clarifying not only what does it mean to be in your body, but why. Why are we why do we need to be in our body? What's the reason behind it? Like, you know, instead of just following the script, maybe we can look a little bit at the science.
Oh, yeah. Sign me
up. Know how that
Sign
is.
Sign me up over here looking at the science. Yeah, why is it important to be in our bodies when we are in a culture where we are constantly being taken out of our bodies? And I really, you know, in our last tea session, we talked all about
Earl Grey.
We talked about, so also interesting, just to jump around, because we do.
Side bit over
so here. Kian likes to drink Earl Grey.
Yes.
And just because I think that this is a natural maybe example of what we're talking about, why Earl Grey? What does it do for your nervous system? What does it do for your body? Because we have different tastes.
Well, I mean, I think it is very calming. But interestingly enough, you know, I don't really think about that unless I'm asked, right? But like,
case in point.
But it's really interesting because I am thinking about it, and one of the reasons why I like Earl Grey is because there was this restaurant we would go to when I was growing up.
Wow, look at that.
Yes, and whenever there was like I had like a tough week, or like a, you know, conversation with someone that was really difficult, or something happened that was dysregulating, I would go to this restaurant. I think it's called New Shanghai. It's been a while.
Oh, where at? What city?
It's in Orange County.
Okay.
I don't remember what city. I think maybe Laguna Hills or somewhere around there.
But somewhere in Orange County.
Yes.
Okay.
And this was like kind of like a hole-in-the-wall family-owned restaurant, and they would give you this Earl Grey tea with like, it was sweetened, and it was like, it was just a thing. It just tasted so good, and it wasn't like super extravagant,
right?
But every time I sat down at New Shanghai and just had some Earl Grey tea, it just was like so calming.
See, I love that. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about is, you know, and when we talk about trauma a lot, and I think what we're really talking about is implicit memories, where the body remembers something.
Yes.
And
associations.
Exactly.
And they're unconscious. We don't even remember until, you know, you just asked me just now, and I'm like, oh, that's why it brings comfort. That's why, you know, it feels good.
Yeah. I would say so. I drink chamomile, and it reminds me of my grandmother.
There you go.
Right, and there was like a nurturance there. She always made teas, or if we had a stomach ache, or if we had something, it
Love that.
was it was chamomile. And I would just, I always thought my grandma's a little witchy, but she probably is a little bit. But it's our associations with these things, and so I think when we ask why is it so important to be in the body, because I believe that the body holds wisdom
Yes.
that we are not always consciously asking
Absolutely.
ourselves.
1000%. Yes. And I think like tapping into a higher level of consciousness is tapping into a higher connection with the body. And we are, as we talk about, from a holistic perspective, we're mind, body, and soul.
Yeah.
And I actually went to this yoga class, and I've started going recently, and the instructor was like, okay, now breathe in and then breathe out. And then she's like, you're not the mind, you're not even the body, you are a spirit.
Oh.
Right? And it's
Yeah.
like every time, you're in these poses in yoga, it's like, I had this one kind of moment where we were doing some strenuous like pose. I don't know the poses that well,
okay.
but
Yeah,
it's like something, I think it was like a chair related pose. Maybe it's called chair pose.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm very beginner. But we were in this chair pose, and then she's like, okay, now after the strenuous, tense like experience of this holding this chair pose.
I know the chair pose.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm like, okay, my legs are dying,
Right.
like, then she was like, okay, now take a big deep breath in and then breathe out and then lean forward into stillness. And it just hit me so hard. And I was like, oh my gosh, the permission to lean forward into stillness, and like what that did, it was like a massive pressure release for my body and my nervous system. And I just began to weep, I was just like,
it was a release.
Yes. And I was totally just like allowing, the tears to fall. And I was like, wow, this is such a beautiful reminder. We can lean forward into stillness after something so strenuous.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is just so wild, and I think really synchronistic, because I had a very similar experience, and we haven't talked about either of these. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But there was an exercise, and it was very similar in that sort of capacity, where I actually was invited into stillness, and it was this this exercise that they were doing as a part of this like somatic therapy conference. And it's funny because as a therapist, I'm always saying, okay, let's go into your body, let's go into your body. And so somebody's asking me that. That's not my therapist. And I'm sitting in a crowd of probably 200 people. And the facilitator said, we're going to quiet self. We're going to go into self. And immediately I started to panic. And my heart is just going. And it was an interesting threshold to witness inside of myself that my body was experiencing, and wanting to go right up into my head and to change it, to fix it, right? I'm like, Gail, is this a panic attack? To get control over it, right?
Yes.
And I'm saying, okay, Gail, you know how to do this. Breathe. Is this a panic? What is? And there was all these thoughts that came into my mind to settle and release this. But what if that was the perfect and just right amount of activation that I had to start to recognize? And I think that what we're talking about here is also potentially like, what's your threshold and what's the challenge threshold, where you're just challenged enough where the emotions could come out. Like it sounds like for you, they came out. You were able to have some sort of release in that experience. What do you think about that?
It's like, it's kind of funny because I think of like, so I was watching Harry Potter.
As one does,
There is a connection here, trust me. But I was watching Harry Potter, and it was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And it's like they're in the maze. And if anyone's a Harry Potter fan, they understand like this. I know it's kind of it's controversial right now, but this was like a throwback, moment. And I'm like, okay, so they're in the maze. Cedric Diggory is with Harry Potter, and they're trying to like compete, right, to win the games. I forget what it's called. is it called the World Cup, something World Cup? I don't remember. But anyway,
Yeah.
they're trying to win and they're in this maze, and they get to the end of the maze and they get to grabbing the goblet.
Okay.
And the goblet is a portal. And it
Oof.
takes them into another dimension. It takes them into another space
Right.
where the enemy is present,
Yeah.
right? Voldemort, the bad guy in the series. And then it's
He
like
knows he has to spell it out
right,
for me.
right, just in case,
Just
know.
in case.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
seen Harry Potter, but like it's like the portal to this dimension. And the reason why I'm kind of going there is because we have these moments in life where we reach towards something, like a TV show or a movie or a book, and it becomes a portal to accessing pressure release.
Yes.
And so you could be watching like a TV show or a movie, and then all of a sudden you just start bawling, or you just experience this massive like fear or rage, or something sets in the body, and it's like we're accessing a portal to release the emotion that's been compressed. And we have these moments in life where we can do that if we lean into the possibility. So right, you could be watching Harry Potter, you could be watching another movie or a TV show, and then all of a sudden there's this grief that gets processed.
Yeah.
Because you've reached a portal. So anyway, that's kind of like what comes up for me when I think about that.
Wow, that's really great. And I'm feeling that in my body. Kind of in my chest, and I think about grief, and I love the words that you're using, portal and dimension, because I think that's essentially what we're talking about. Is we can all be orbiting the same thing always within ourselves, but what if there's a possibility to unlock something deeper? And some of us are using shows, some of us are using movies, series, or different things. Some of us are using relationships, where some relationships are actually taking you to a deeper portal of self. I know also when you're on a healing journey, you start to do things different, and there's going to be a different response because of what you're doing different. And talk about unlocking new experiences and new portals of feelings. Because I think every time we're leveling up in our healing journey, there's a new question that's being asked about your healing journey. There's a new question that's maybe being asked on the other side of it, because there's an ebb and the flow of the response. So I almost think about like with this movie that you're talking about, Harry Potter, and how they pushed through and entered into a new dimension where there was new problems.
Yes, exactly. And things are not what they seem. I think that ties into like, how we were kind of discussing earlier before we started this episode.
Yeah.
How the hippocampus can blur the past and the present, and how sometimes the experiences we have are not what they seem. And our brain is constantly pulling from the past. Right, our hippocampus is constantly pulling from memories that are associated with high levels of emotion that leave deep imprints, deep cognitive imprints in the neural pathways. Right, that they sustain. We talked about last episode. Right, the loop is sustained.
Yes, because there's a feedback loop. There's a feedback loop that continues to say that yes, this is dangerous. Yes, this is not okay. Yes, respond in this sort of capacity.
Exactly. And we're going back to that idea of yoga and meditation, because it's not just about orienting to the present moment.
Right.
It's not just about directing your attention and your focus here or there, right? It's about giving your hippocampus new information. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Let's jump into
that. Why not?
Jump in.
I'm going to pour myself a little more tea here.
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing Kian talk about is that the issues with the hippocampus, and how it, we call it that temporal collapse, where past and present is blurred. And so the individual can't recognize, is this a past trauma that my hippocampus is saying this is a dangerous situation? And so what we know with individuals that have gone through trauma, and this is people that have access to their trauma and they've been able to identify these were some traumatic events, or individuals that have maybe repressed trauma, where they're constantly having these implicit memories. And so when we think about implicit memory, there's explicit memories and there's implicit memories. And explicit memories we can put words to. Implicit memories are memories that the body is holding within. It's kind of like the implicit memory bank that we went to when Keen was talking about the tea, his experience with tea, and how it was this calming memory that you continue to create. There's another feedback loop. There's a positive feedback loop where you're changing the system and you're saying, this is something that I remember. This is an anchor in my world that brings me safety, right? The hippocampus does the exact same thing, but with threat.
Absolutely.
So just as much as tea is a safety anchor, we might have, a loud noise being a threat to the hippocampus, where they say the hippocampus. I personify a lot of the mechanisms of the brain. The hippocampus is like, we're going down. We really need help here. This is not good.
Yes.
Because of cueing from the environment. So when you talk about meditation, we talk about yoga, so much of what we're talking about is there's an appropriate split, and you get to witness multiple points of perspective within that experience.
Yes.
And to be to witness yourself and say, oh, that's what's happening, gives you some space to renegotiate. And oftentimes that doesn't happen in the moment. It's usually what's happening after the moment has taken place.
Tell us more about the renegotiation. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Renegotiation, and if you use kind of like, analogy or personification, it's kind of fun with the whole inside out thing.
Yeah. So when I think of renegotiating, I think of reframing. So if I'm if I'm thinking about renegotiating how my brain is perceiving it versus what's really happening right in my present moment, it's a lot of saying, is this what's happening right now? Or why is my reaction so big? If my reaction is really big to something that, like, I often will think about, like, the barometer 0 to 10. If my reaction is an 8 or a 9, and the event that I'm actually experiencing in my front of my being right now is a 4, then that tells me that this is my past coming up into my present. So how can I help my body, my mind readjust to how to respond in a way that is more appropriate? That's kind of one aspect. And I think the other aspect is, and it's not going to happen simultaneously. I recently had an experience where I had to really think about, what was that, Gail? Why did you react so much? And for me, it was a buildup. There was a buildup. It was a culmination of things that was coming out.
Yeah.
And it was coming out.
Compiled.
It was compiled.
Yeah.
So it's getting the storyline of the why the reaction, and then also the renegotiating of, okay, well then what was that actually connected to? And I always go back to the 3 triggers. It's either a core belief that's getting hit on, sensory is telling my system this is dangerous, or a feeling. Wow, and bringing it back to say, okay, so what was the real thing that was coming up for me? And I think the negotiation process is being able to hold this, explore this part, and also explore this part, and say, okay, well then that means this is starting to come up for me.
Yes.
This is an opportunity.
It reminds me of putting your thoughts on trial, right? And this idea of, like,
love that.
It's like, to kind of expand on what you were saying. And I love the way you put that, like, because it is that renegotiation. When you're putting your thoughts on trial, it's like, okay, here's the evidence for this, here's the evidence against it,
right? And
here's the verdict, right? Here's the actual verdict. And if there's a threat, it's like looking at, is there a physical threat or emotional threat? And is the if there's, like, if the emotional threat is like, I feel like it's a 7 or an 8, and then compare that with, am I in any physical danger?
Right.
Is it a physical threat?
Right.
If they don't line up, which usually most of the time, if I'm like, I got into an argument with Gail, which never happens.
all the time. Just kidding.
Love, we both went different directions.
I know, yeah.
Yin and yang, but like that's the, it's like those numbers don't match up.
Right.
So then that's when your brain can say, okay, wait. So my fear, is it based in the emotions or is it based in the physical? Because if I'm not in any physical danger, my reaction needs to be proportionate to that.
Right.
And I think we need that reminder, right, every now and then that, you're not in physical danger. Yeah.
One of the things that I keep, that I hear in that is reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are some individuals that have the ability to self-reflect.
Yes.
And there are some individuals that don't.
Yes.
And I think that's actually a result of trauma.
It is. Absolutely.
Not being able to self-reflect, one, is really difficult and harmful to be on the other end of.
Yes.
But maybe we can explore how and why self-reflection gets lost in developmental trauma.
It definitely does. I mean, when we go there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. So I think that the first thing that comes to mind is rigidity, right? So when you are talking to somebody who does not have the ability to self-reflect, let's look at their brain, not who they are as a person, but just their brain. There's a lot
and then we'll look at who they are
and
as
then
a
we'll
person
look at
later.
them, yeah. But their brain, right, doesn't have the same flexibility. It's very rigid.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's not capable of that. It's because it's been prioritized over and over and over again that rigidity is survival, right? So then we go to black and white thinking. We talked about this before. But with the brain, when there's less rigidity, there's more expansion. There's more room to explore.
Yes.
I was actually talking about this with my therapist, right, like a couple of weeks ago. And there's more room for that expansion. And so when we have expansion, we have social engagement come back online. We have all these things.
Yes.
And then, right, we can have a different perspective and go into that negotiation.
I love what you're saying. I would love to demonstrate this. If you know me, you know I love a good demo. If we're talking about systems, because you use the word social engagement comes back online. If we look at maybe the average person, and let's say that the developing mind needs to have multiple capacities that are online and that are developing over time through the benefit of healthy attachment, right? And we're talking about the neurological processes.
Yes.
Right? We're talking about not just your central nervous system. We're also talking about your skeletal muscular system. We're talking about the mind-body connection over here. We're talking about social engagement. We're talking about reciprocity with self, agency. So let's say that
elimination systems.
Bring that in. Tell me about that.
Well, there's no other mugs left, so
yeah, so that one's out. But if you were to, let's bring that in. Let's say elimination.
So when we think about elimination system, right? We've got like the endocrine system. We've got like, okay, well, when you drink liquid, right, it goes out. You gotta urinate.
That kind of elimination.
Yeah, there's elimination. I really like to kind of go back to expression of emotions, right? Like rage and anger, grief, when sadness is stored in the body. It needs to be eliminated. It needs to be not wiped out. It just needs to process through.
Metabolize.
Yes, it needs to metabolize. It needs to move through the system and then be excreted from the system. Just like any other, way that we go through that process as part of being a human being. And when we think about those systems, the elimination system is just so important because it allows for newness to come in.
It makes space.
It makes space. And when we have someone who has so much rigidity, right, and their hippocampus is
rigidity. If we say rigidity, we're saying trauma, just stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
Thank you. Yes.
Filled up.
Yes, the rigidity all the way, and there's no expansion, and it's just I'm surviving, and I'm in the black and white thinking, and there's no elimination in the system, no pressure release. Then that's where we can go into like topics of autoimmune issues where the body says, I feel like I'm under attack, right? There's
Yes.
there's no decompression of the system. There's no elimination. And so just like any other toxin in your body, if you kept toxins in your body would what?
Break down.
It would break down. It
Yeah.
would start to defend against the toxins.
Yeah. That was the cue and the right answer. Right
That
there.
was that. Yeah. There you go.
So if we think about
Yes,
the
yes.
endocrine system being one of these, we'll take out another one. But developmental trauma takes out some of the key players.
Absolutely.
And so maybe we have ones and it offsets the system and there's gaps. There's
Got
gaps
a lot
in
of
the
gaps.
system.
Got
Big
a lot.
gaps.
Yeah.
Big gaps that aren't there. And so when we're talking about reflection, well, we need to make space so that it can start to manifest and we can bring that in. And sometimes that's through different things. And in our last episode, we kind of talked about what are playful ways to turn on some of your systems.
Yes.
How do we activate some of those systems again? And it's not always through therapy. It can be through yoga. It can be through play. It can be through tennis. It could be through golf. It could be through sports. It could be through recovery groups and fellowship groups. How do we turn on a system that has not been turned on?
And what you're talking about is the disconfirming the incoming fear signals to the amygdala, right? And to the brain.
Yeah.
That sensory input has the power to do, right?
Yes.
And so what you're talking about is we're saying that when we change the sensory, when we give the brain novelty, when we look at ways of diversifying our portfolio.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good way to look
Right?
at it.
We're
Yeah.
basically just saying we're bringing in the new sensory. And now the hippocampus doesn't need to prioritize the old sensory. It's saying you're here, you're in the present moment.
And the present moment is okay.
And it's safe.
Which is really interesting because I think so much of our culture, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, isn't in the present moment. We're on our phones. We're scrolling all the time. I mean, myself, all the time.
Reinforcing the past, living in the past.
Right.
Creating the same loops, right? Because the brain is drawn to what is familiar.
But if I'm in my sensory present, and my present is saying you are loved, you are seen, you are appreciated, you are able to have a different view of this situation, whatever it is.
Yes.
That's new information in my sensory present, but I have to be present enough to receive it, or present enough with my reactions, or I need to be able to be reflective and say, when you gave me permission, that was a new experience for me, and maybe that made me uncomfortable. Why did it make me uncomfortable? What does that say? You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
really being like attuned with self to recognize this is what just happened moment by moment. That mindfulness of witnessing yourself have reactions.
Yes. And when you talk about that, I'm thinking about this book called Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen.
Bring it in.
I believe that's the correct name.
Yeah.
It's been a while. But that Hardwiring Happiness talks about how the brain prioritizes threat. It prioritizes the past. It prioritizes anything to protect you and to keep you in the same role that you've been in, right? And so when we think about being in the same role that you've been in, I have clients that tell me like, oh, I feel so guilty for having this boundary, or I feel so, bad about not being the same as I was with this friend because I'm outgrowing people pleasing. And really what that is I'll tell them, right? It's like that is not guilt. Yeah. That is your brain saying, enter person's name, Sam, you need to be in this role. And you've always been in this role, and this is what makes you safe, right? And so the brain is saying, you're not being a good friend. You should be better at this. You should be putting your needs last, because your brain is scared of being in any other role than the role that's been defined as safe.
Yes, yes, yes. And when we're shifting that you've renegotiated. Essentially, the renegotiation has
renegotiation.
already happened. And you're saying, I want to show up differently. Also, and I think that goes into what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is there's going to be new responses to you showing up differently because you're changing the whole homeostasis of the system, the whole environment. You know, I shifted these cups and then we shifted again and I had to move them over here. The whole nature of the room shifted because we moved different organisms in the space. And so when we're getting that new feedback, your brain is ultimately going to say, yep, see, wrong way, turn around now, AKA the guilt or AKA the judgment, right? AKA the doubt. Is this the right way? And AKA threat.
Yes, threat detection.
But what we're saying is, what if that's the right activation that actually needs to be happening, that somebody else, they need to be activated. You need to be activated. And I think in a culture where we're so used to people saying, you triggered me, well, I'm sorry, but whose responsibility is it if you're triggered? We have to be aware and we have to be mindful.
Right.
But if you're being triggered, then that should be telling you something about so you tell me what's happening with your body.
Yeah.
What's happening in your system. That's a really great invitation to say, what's going on for me?
It's illuminating. It's lighting up a point or an area where you need to direct your attention to.
Right. And so what if we don't all get scared? What if we don't get scared? Oh, you're triggering me. And what if we start to shift into you're activating me? Because triggered is a very different, we're kind of renegotiating.
Yes, reframe that. Like, that's perfect. Yeah, I love what you're doing there.
Because trigger takes it from, you did this to me, when what if I'm creating something in your environment that's telling your body something. Are you listening to your body? Are you reflecting and saying, what is happening for me and how do I help my body? How do I help listen to this? So what if we reframe that a little bit? What do you think about that?
I love this idea, right? Because it's really just saying my autonomy looks different than maybe the rigid black and white box that it's been in, right? To be autonomous for some people means, don't be disempowered. Yeah. And I think that's so powerful, right? Because it's like, it's this reframe of, yes, of course, no one wants to be disempowered, but why does it feel disempowering?
Yes.
Why does it feel that way?
Why does it feel disempowering, and why does being disempowered what does it bring up for me?
Yes.
Right? Because maybe what you're showing in my world is making me feel disempowered, but again, my response, my reaction, if my reaction is a 7, when this is a 3 event, then that tells me I need to investigate my story of being disempowered in my life.
Absolutely. Oh, right? So powerful. Yes.
Because that's going to tell me a whole lot more than whatever's happening in this interaction. Because my present is telling me something about my remembered past.
Yes, exactly. And I think like what's coming up for me when you say that is like we're looking at like the different dimensions, right? But we're looking at first we started out the episode and we're talking about how we're putting thoughts on trial and you're explaining that process, and then how it's like making the distinction between what's the physical threat, what's the emotional threat, what's the number, right? We're assigning a number.
Yeah.
And I think we can do the same thing with the different parts of our brain, right? So like with the hippocampus, if we dive in a little deeper and we look at okay, what's the number there? How much is my hippocampus pulling from the past to reference, the present? Yeah. Or is it like what are we at, right? Is my hippocampus going straight to a 9 whenever I'm triggered at this specific thing?
Right.
And how can I kind of dive into that expression of the hippocampus, and instead of allowing it to determine my autonomy, how can I reclaim my autonomy and change it from the inside out?
Right. Oh, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about. And I think you just took us to another dimension, which is instead of me focusing on what's happening outside of me, I need to focus on what's happening inside of me so I can bring up agency. And so when we're talking about trauma, usually agency has been taken.
Yes.
That space to be big, that space to say this is not okay has been taken. So it's going to continue to show up in all these other relationships as this isn't okay, this isn't okay, this isn't okay. Beautiful. And I love that you're taking your agency. Can you take it inside as well?
Yes.
Can you take it inside and see, okay, this is telling me something so much more
Right.
about my story in a beautiful way.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes we often get lost in, and it's so funny because it like all comes full circle, because we get so lost in what we think is happening in the reality when it's really what's happening internally.
Yes, and losing part of going back into the body is not losing sight of what's happening internally, right? Because we can externalize for control and power and feelings of safety when we intellectualize, ironically, right? But when we do go back into our body, we are saying what's happening in here.
Which is literally what we did when we first started our episode. And I said,
Yes.
tell me about Earl Grey. And you could have been like, it's great. It tastes really good. And it's
Great
my
flavor,
go-to.
you
Yeah,
know.
you could have gone it, which I may have done that. I may have really gone into it. But you went into, like, it sounds like you went into your internal world.
Yes.
And what we're saying is maybe we're too in the external. And how do we bring us back into the internal world? I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm scared of my internal world.
It is.
I had panic when I was invited in there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And sorry, you're just reminding me of something. It's the sensory. You're getting more connected to the sensory when you go back to your internal world.
Yes.
What were we thinking of? You know, like, boom.
Boom.
What
Look
were you thinking of? You're like, my grandma, right? She used to prepare this. It's like all the sensory input from that memory brought you back to that moment.
Yes.
Same with me, right?
Yes.
It's like the sensory input of the hot tea on the table and like the warmth of being around friends, community, the smells, the really sweet, like, you know, mom that was in the kitchen, like cooking and came out and just said, hey, how can I help you? You know, what's your order, all that kind of stuff. And it's more of like, it's nurturing. Exactly. It's like, how can I help you feel the warmth that I'm preparing through this food, right? We think about like sensory, and it really allows us to connect to the body.
So I guess that's really kind of the theme and the overall invitation in this session is, how can you become more oriented to your sensory system as a way to regulate?
Absolutely. Yep.
Instead of the head, get yourself in your body.
Yes.
Coming into the space, because there's more safety in the sensory than there is in the mind sometimes.
And I think as you kind of like, as we're winding down, right? Like slowing down. Of course, in the podcast episode, we have to cover a lot of information.
Yeah.
We love talking about this stuff, but it's like really just like, there is no urgency, there is no rush. Slowing down. What is the sign of a healing nervous system? Talking less, slowing down, pausing. And even just the way that, like, as you could see, like, Gail, as she's winding down, right? She's changing her voice to be slower. And really just feeling, as you're talking about being in the present moment, you're actually embodying that. And you're like, you know, exuding that energy of just being present and quiet and taking in the sensory information. And you can feel it.
It's like we're bringing it into the energy.
Yes.
And the energy is kind of bringing it into us.
Yes.
So it's this invitation in our in space.
And I think it's you know, it really is a gift when we think about, you know, trying to accomplish goals, you know, really winning at this game or being hired on this project or whatever it is. It really boils down to regulation, right? People can train all they want. They can study all they want. When you go into the room, Like, for example, with acting, right? Or any kind of performance based,
Yeah.
there has to be that regulation. And regulation is really the key to a lot of success.
Right.
The ability to slow down. And what's really hard is we don't really have that privilege. A lot of people don't have the privilege to slow down. Their brain is going really fast. But we all have the ability to pause at one moment throughout the day and just breathe. We're breathing. Everyone can breathe, right? Like, when we pause, obviously not everyone can have the same experience.
Right.
But if we think about, like, what is accessible to us, to most of us,
Yeah.
is that ability to pause and take one breath.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of breaths as he's talking about this. I love that.
And what does that invite in when we think about breathing in, right? We're taking in, we're breathing in space. Our lungs are expanding. And I want us to walk away with the visualization that we can breathe in the new and expand and take up space, right? With every new breath, we create new patterns in the body. We allow the nervous system to learn something new, to orient the hippocampus from the past into the present.
Well said. On that note, I think we covered it. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode. It's been great speaking with you guys on this topic and just diving into this human experience that we all share.
And don't forget to comment or send us a DM or
like
any
and
requests.
subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Absolutely.
And also, if there's any topics that you want us to talk about, let us know. We'll jump into it.
Yes, we are active on Threads. You can find us on Threads. You can find me at holistic.therapist and
Gail at The Spiritual Therapist.
And we are posting often about these topics. So we invite you to become a part of the dialogue. If you're just listening in now, please, again, subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we'll be seeing you next time for episode 4, 5? I don't even know.
We're on 5.
5? Yeah.
Episode 5.
Episode 5. Here we go.
Here we go.
All right.
Take care, y'all. Bye.
Bye.